Hi, and welcome back to another podcast in our series on supporting students, parents, and school staff through COVID-19. I am Dr. Marc Crundwell, and I am with my colleague, Dr. Elaine Williams from the Psychology Department. We are also very excited today to have Rachel Olivero with us. Rachel is our Equity and Inclusive Education Officer for the Greater Essex County District School Board. Today, we would like to take some time to discuss how parents and caregivers can assist their children or adolescents with understanding and countering stigma and racism around COVID-19.
Yes, it's great to be here, Mark. We're in some very unusual and unprecedented times right now, and the ongoing concerns over COVID-19 are making some children, adolescents, and families more anxious. All of these worries make sense, and of course there's nothing wrong with being afraid. But as people share news, fears, and concerns, some people are sharing something else as well: racism and xenophobia. Anxiety may also lead to placing blame on others who are perceived to be associated with the outbreak.
Thank you both for allowing me to be here. Obviously, Chinese people are not responsible for a virus simply because the virus first reported cases were in China. It's so important to teach our young people, children and adolescents, that while the virus is linked to a particular geographic location, it is not linked to a specific race or nationality. This is extremely important, as some politicians and media figures have taken to referring to the virus as the Chinese coronavirus. They've used stereotypes about the different foods people eat around the world, or even made jokes that rely on Chinese-sounding words or phrases to make light of the crisis, and somehow suggest Chinese people are to blame. Some have even gone so far as to suggest that China should apologize for the virus.
We need to remember that children and adolescents take their cues from their parents and caregivers. Yes, adolescents do. They're looking for guidance and support on how to respond to these stressful events. It becomes very important for us as parents and caregivers to help them understand the importance of treating all people with dignity and not associating entire groups of people with things that are happening in different parts of the country or the world.
That is really important. So that's why today we'd like to take some time to provide some tips to parents and caregivers like yourself to help you think critically about being a good role model for your child and adolescent and to help them deal with the issues we're facing now.
Right. We know that as people who care for children, we want them to grow into compassionate and fair adults. But life is so busy that we oftentimes don't have the time and space to think deeply about the messages that we're sending to our young people. As we provide some tips, it's important to remember how vital modeling acceptance and compassion is, and that it's important to watch for harmful language or behavior from your child or adolescent and to encourage them and work with them to stop it.
You're right, Elaine. It is important to model acceptance and compassion, and that leads me into the first tip we're going to talk about. Children and adolescents will take their emotional cues from the significant adults in their lives. So we have to make sure that we don't make negative or stereotypical statements about any racial, ethnic, or religious group. By negative or stereotypical, I mean statements that say something that makes a whole group of people seem that they have done something wrong or have the same negative characteristics.
We know when we have accurate information about people, events, and feelings, we feel empowered. So the second tip is to make sure that you share information that is factually true. This is important as children and adolescents are likely being exposed to many news sources, especially right now. They're also likely hearing people talk about COVID-19 when we might think they're not listening. And if they are online on different social media platforms, they may be hearing many negative statements about specific groups. As many children have increased access to social media and online chat apps right now, they are more likely to be exposed to disinformation and negative opinions than we might think they are. They often struggle to separate what's accurate information from what's opinion or rhetoric, since they can be presented in the same format. Because of this, children and adolescents often have difficulties understanding and making sense of all the information and opinions that they're exposed to.
That is so true. You really have to make an effort to monitor the news and social media children and adolescents may be exposed to, because it really can be influencing them in very negative ways. And we know children and adolescents, and Even us as adults can take negative stereotypes and information that we're being exposed to and really start to generalize these ideas and stereotypes we interact with every day and people in the larger community. There is a focus on a particular nationality, ethnicities, who others affiliate with, or with physical appearance of those who live in certain places, then we often see the development of prejudice, anger, and mistrust toward innocent groups of people. This is why we as parents and caregivers need to provide good information to help our children and adolescents understand what is going on, so that they can identify and correct any prejudices and biases that they may have learned. Helping children and adolescents understand prejudice and biases is always important. But right now, we have a concrete and current example that we can use to point to prejudicial attitudes. In general, most parents and caregivers would teach their children that harassment and bullying of others is unacceptable. In our current times, where we have some blatant comments in mainstream media that are racist and degrading, we as parents and caregivers can use these examples as learning opportunities. We can talk about the reasons for this behavior and involve them in a discussion about other ways of expressing anger, frustration, and confusion. As parents and caregivers, it's so important to consistently speak up if you hear, see, or read discriminatory comments, and to discuss and explain why such behaviors or statements are offensive. And as we said earlier, our young people are watching our behavior, even when we aren't aware of it or intending to teach them something.
That's a really good point, Rachel. I think most people have heard the idea that sometimes the best way to understand how someone else feels or why they may have done something is to try and put ourselves in their shoes and see it the way they saw it. The next tip reflects this. One way to help children and adolescents understand prejudice and bias is to discuss with them how it would feel to be blamed unfairly for something by association. For example, have they ever been blamed for something that a friend or a sibling did, and how did they feel? Or have they ever had a time at school where their entire class was punished for something that happened, and most of the class wasn't even involved? For adolescents, we could discuss with them how they would feel if they were criticized or harassed because of how they look, or what they wear, or for the group of friends they hang around with. It can be a very powerful learning experience when you try to understand how it would feel to be like someone else.
That is very important. And something else that can be very powerful in helping children and adolescents to understand and overcome prejudice and bias and how they may be reacting to COVID-19 is to talk to people in their lives who have had a positive role or have been a positive role model for them. We can discuss and identify with them people of diverse ethnicities, religions, or from different countries who moved to Canada who've had a positive place in their lives. If you think about it, they can be neighbors, they can be family friends, they could be school staff or healthcare professionals, to name a few. When we identify and discuss these individuals, we can talk about the many characteristics and values and experience that they have had that are in common with ours. We can also talk with them and identify heroes of different backgrounds, cultures, ethnicities, and religions that are very involved right now in responding to COVID-19. These may include doctors or nurses or police officers, people who are rescue workers, volunteers who are stepping up to assist, public officials helping to coordinate our response to COVID-19, and all the regular people who are out there who are helping to work with students, families, and communities to try and make them safe.
Right. Identifying, discussing, and relating important and helpful people in their lives can really help bridge a gap and help them see others with diverse backgrounds in a positive way. Another way we can help children and adolescents that is future-based is to have them become involved in projects or events that help others in the healing process. By participating with classmates or other members of the community that come from diverse backgrounds, they may feel they're making a positive contribution, and it really builds on and reinforces their sense of community and includes people from diverse backgrounds. Are there any ways we can speak up against bias and prejudice that we can model to children and adolescents?
Yes, thank you for asking, Dr. Williams. In fact, there is a resource, it's excellent. It's called Teaching Tolerance. And from Teaching Tolerance, they recommend a 4-step process for speaking up against bias. And it involves 4 steps: interrupt, question.
The third step is to educate. The last step is to echo.
So let's take a look at them one area at a time, see what speaking up against racism during the coronavirus might look like now. First step is to interrupt. Interrupting means taking a time out. It shows the person you're talking, texting, or chatting with that what they've said is important enough to pause your conversation to address, that you need to talk about the racism before you talk about anything else. Here's a few phrases to try. Hang on, I want to go back to what you called the virus. Just a second. Let's get into your point that the virus is somebody's fault. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about the language you just used. Second step is to question. We're all familiar with questions that are really warnings. What did you just say to me? Or, are you really going to do that? But in this context, the goal of questioning really is to better understand why the person said what they did. You might ask, why do you think they call it the Chinese coronavirus? Why do you think that? Where did you get that information? One note, asking someone to explain why a racist joke is funny is a great way to stop them from making racist jokes to you again. But if you want to have a real discussion about what's said, it might work better to ask something like, what made you say that?
Oh, that's a good point, Rachel. The third step is to educate. The key to educating is to continue the conversation. The goal here isn't just to provide facts about the topic generally to the person you're talking with, but to explain why what they've said needs rethinking. That means that to educate folks about racism associated with the coronavirus, we need to understand not only the virus, but also the racism. For example, you might explain that it's actually not common anymore to name a disease after its place of origin, that there's a long, bad history of associating diseases with specific groups of people, and that the name COVID-19 was chosen very carefully to avoid repeating those mistakes. If someone tries to play down racist phrases as just a joke, you can educate them about the discrimination and racism many Asian and Pacific Islander folks are facing right now, so they better understand the impact of their words. The last step is to echo. It takes an effort to speak up against racist ideas and language. This is particularly true of people who are targeted by that language. That's why we need to have each other's backs. When someone else speaks up, echo them, thank them, and emphasize or amplify their message any way you can. This not only encourages that more people to speak up, it also ensures that no one thinks your silence in response to biased ideas or language means that you're okay with it. Of course, echoing is harder while we're social distancing, but there are many ways to do it. Online, we can reshare anti-racist messages, and in chats or conversations, we can respond to offer support and agreement. In the coming weeks, we're all going to have to make an effort to take care of one another. We'll probably need to make some more sacrifices to ensure that our communities stay as safe and healthy as possible. Speaking up against bigotry, particularly if you're not the target, costs very little. If we all commit to interrupting, questioning, educating, and echoing to fight racist rhetoric, we can start making our communities safer and healthier today.
We have provided a lot of information that we hope can help. And there is one other quick thing we want to mention. It is important for parents and caregivers to understand that stressors and trauma really can impact our functioning both now and in the future. Experiencing stress, prejudice, and racism, regardless of the stage of life we are in, can contribute to such things as anxiety, depression, grief, fear, anger, and isolation. These experiences can also lead to an increase in external behaviors, such as more reactive or aggressive, for example. This time, children may be very concerned about actions or statements they hear or see in the news, in their community, country, or in the world. They may fear for their family and friends, and may be afraid that they might be targeted because of their gender, race, culture, religion, or immigration status. It is important for us to find ways to promote a sense of safety for us all, but especially for children and adolescents.
There are a number of things we can do to promote a sense of safety for our children and our adolescents and our family in general. Please consider listening to our podcast posted on the website about increasing the sense of safety in home. It provides a great deal of information and suggestions. We will also be following up with other podcasts to help parents and caregivers support their children and adolescents. So please keep checking the website. We would like to thank you for taking this time to listen to this podcast and hope it was helpful for you. And as always, be kind to yourself and to others.